1984 is, I believe, a quite terrifying masterpiece. So terrifying, in fact, I don't think I should like to read another like it.
I think that allowing for the book being, after all, a parody, something like 1984 could actually happen. This is the direction the world is going in at the present time. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever.
George Orwell's chilling line about a boot stomping on your face forever is very close to its ultimate fulfillment. You see, the people who boldly announce that by 2030 you'll own nothing and be happy, and that you'll merely rent whatever you need, met during the week of January 25th, 2021, to discuss plans for a total reshaping of the planet. That's right, I'm talking about the World Economic Forum, also known as the Davos class. The conference kicked off with remarks from Klaus Schwab, founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, who claimed 2021 is a pivotal and crucial year for our future.
We are here together in 2021, which I consider a pivotal year, a crucial year for our future. We have the chance to move out with vaccines of the hot phase of the COVID crisis and to rebuild our economies, but we have to do so in a way that our economy and our society will be more resilient, more inclusive, and more sustainable.
The week-long conference was attended by representatives from government, banking, business, academia, media, big tech, and big pharma. Some of the more notable speakers included Dr. Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, Kristalina Georgieva, Al Gore, John Kerry, Christine Lagarde, Angela Merkel, Sundar Pichai, and Rajiv Shah. There were also special addresses delivered by Antonio Guterres, Emmanuel Macron, Benjamin Netanyahu, Vladimir Putin, Ursula von der Leyen, and Xi Jinping.
Public health emergencies like COVID-19 may very well recur, and global public health governance needs to be enhanced. The Earth is our one and only home. To scale up efforts to address climate change and promote sustainable development bears on the future of humanity. No global problem can be solved by any one country alone. There must be global action, global response, and global cooperation.
The 7 main themes of this year's Davos meeting were how to save the planet, fairer economies, tech for good, society and future of work, better business, healthy futures, and beyond geopolitics. Sounds good, right? Well, if you would like everything in your life decided by a cabal of rich, self-congratulating, well-connected insiders, then I'm sure it sounds wonderful. For the rest of us who value independence, freedom, and privacy, Davos' goal of saving the planet and transforming society sound more like authoritarian battle cries, the likes of which even George Orwell would be horrified by. Davos frontman Klaus Schwab has openly stated that the COVID-19 pandemic was the perfect opportunity to reimagine our world, and even wrote an entire book about how to do it. In fact, Schwab proudly proclaimed the world would never go back to normal after the pandemic, as if this was an awful thing.
So people assume we are just going back to the good old world which we had, and everything will be normal again in how we are used to normal, in the old fashion. This is, let's say, fiction. It will not happen. The cut which we have now is much too strong in order not to leave traces.
In his book, Schwab doubled down on his stance of not returning to normal. Predictably, Schwab wasn't the only one who felt this way. He was joined by many government and business leaders who eerily began echoing almost the exact same statements in the media.
I want to be straight with you. There will be no return to the old normal for the foreseeable future. I repeat, there will be no return to the old normal for the foreseeable future.
If you're talking about getting back to a degree of normality which resembles where we were prior to COVID, it's going to be well into 2021, maybe even towards the end of 2021.
Realistically, COVID-19 will be here for the next 18 months or more. We will not be able to return to normalcy until we find a vaccine or effective medications. I know that's dreadful news to hear. How are people supposed to find work if this goes on in some form for a year and a half? Is all that economic pain worth trying to stop COVID-19? The truth is, we have no choice. We cannot return to normal until there's a vaccine.
It was Schwab's World Economic Forum, along with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, that sponsored Event 201 back in October 2019. This pandemic preparedness exercise presented an almost carbon copy of what would take place in real life just a few months later.
It began in healthy-looking pigs, months, perhaps years ago. A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. Gradually, farmers started getting sick. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive care. Many died. At first, the spread was limited to those with close contacts, healthcare personnel, co-workers, and families. But now, it's spreading rapidly throughout local communities. International travel has turned local epidemics into a pandemic spanning the globe. Just 3 months ago, CAPS started in South America, but has now reached several countries with more than 30,000 cases and nearly 2,000 deaths.
Without a question, epidemic risk has become a global strategic concern. I don't think we've ever been in a situation where we have had to respond to so many health emergencies at once. This is a new normal. The scenario you will be presented with this morning could easily become a shared reality one day. I fully expect that we will be confronted by a fast-moving, highly lethal pandemic of a respiratory pathogen. The question is, are we prepared to globally respond to the next major pandemic event?
The mission of the Pandemic Emergency Board is to provide recommendations to deal with the major global challenges arising in response to an unfolding pandemic. The board is comprised of highly experienced leaders from business, public health, and civil society.
We could be looking at double the number of cases in 1 week and 16 times as many in a month if we are not able to stop the spread. That would be on the order of 500,000 cases, and it would continue to rise exponentially. In 3 months, we could be approaching 10 million cases.
We're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic. And there are problems emerging that can only be solved by global business and governments working together.
We'll leave the subject of the virus's true origins and nature for another time. But as the panel of experts predicted, everything did change, and very quickly, once the World Health Organization declared a pandemic on March 11th of 2020. The very same day, the World Economic Forum announced the creation of its COVID Action Platform, serving as a blueprint for reshaping global economic response to the coronavirus pandemic.
This is why we are launching the COVID Action Platform, a unique coalition that will address the crisis in 3 main ways. First, activate the global business community for collective action by improving coordination between them and sharing insights and best practices. Second, protect everyone's livelihoods and ensure business continuity by sharing the latest tools to assess risks, maintain operations, and protect employees. Finally, engage business for the COVID-19 response by strengthening the supply chains for medical equipment and funding the development of vaccines, treatments, and cures. There are many ways you can contribute and join the COVID Action Platform.
Also released was the Strategic Intelligence Platform, developed to explore and monitor the issues and forces driving transformational change across economies, industries, and global issues. In other words, seizing control of everything vital to life on the planet and its population. With these efforts and more, the Davos class wasted no time with its plans to reshape the world. As former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel and brother to Dr. No Return to Normal Zeke Emanuel once stated,
"You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before."
But the real issue has always been about advancing an agenda to create a global government. The pandemic was the excuse used to accelerate this scheme. And oh, what a scheme it is. But let's once again let globalist stooge Klaus Schwab set the stage for the real mechanism that will be used to bring forth all the desired changes of the Davos class. Fear. Again, it was Schwab who recognized that the spread of infectious diseases has a unique ability to fuel fear, anxiety, and mass hysteria. Indeed, the fear-induced hysteria from a public health crisis caused the exact scenarios Event 201 had gamed out just months earlier. COVID-19 served as a wrecking ball, unleashed to upend every facet of life. This worldwide social engineering experiment proved largely successful as societies worldwide were transformed in a couple of months into totalitarian regimes demanding compliance with draconian measures enacted to stop the virus from spreading.
In an unprecedented way, we see all of the governments around the world, with very few exceptions, all adopting the same policy at the same time frame. Right? This tells us that this is a highly coordinated effort, right, internationally, and it tells us that there is a group of people or individuals who are directing the governments essentially what to do, right? And so this is very compatible with, this globalist agenda, moving towards a one world government, and with tighter control over the population, with a reduced population, with a new financial, monetary and currency system. And there's evidence for all these aspects. And I think the overall plan has been well laid out in the United Nations document, Agenda 21, later changed to Agenda 2030. There are many other supporting documents, like you mentioned, the Rockefeller document, and there are several others that essentially give all the details to this plan, and they all correlate with the policies that are taking place right now.
In the US, it was billed as 15 days to slow the spread. Citizens consented to measures that prior to the outbreak would have been considered unthinkable, such as social distancing, face coverings, contact tracing, business closures, and travel restrictions. All aspects of life were totally upended. Fortunately, the death rate from the virus was nowhere near what was predicted in Event 201. However, suicide rates, domestic violence, depression, and substance abuse all surged as the lockdown itself proved more menacing than the virus. But guess what? All of this human suffering was predicted by the Davos class. They knew it would be especially difficult on developing nations and minorities. They were fully aware a crisis of this magnitude would further widen the wealth gap between the rich and the poor. They had foreknowledge of the extreme damage that would be done and the toll it would take on human health, wealth, emotional, and spiritual well-being. But these twisted, sick, power-hungry vampires will use all of this chaos as part of their endgame. Their hope is that by making these inequities more visible, you will readily accept their pre-planned solutions. And this is how they plan to do it.
I'm broadly scientifically literate, but what I will say of this virus, I think we're in the middle of a massive experiment worldwide. And that
where's the guinea pigs?
Maybe the experiment is, will people listen to scientists? In this case, referring to medical professionals. In this particular case.
Say Anthony Fauci over allergy and infectious disease.
For example, and are you washing your hands? And are you taking these precautions? These are warnings offered by scientists.
One of the main themes of January's Davos meetings was centered around building trust. In fact, Schwab believes that one of the most critical issues for their plans to succeed is a renewal of trust. The Davos class are pulling out all the stops to get you to agree with their plans. They can't do this smoothly without your trust. You see, this global game works by manufacturing your consent through sophisticated propaganda, predictive programming, and flat-out brainwashing. Unless you explicitly say no and do something to resist the plans of the Davos class, they'll take your silence and complacency as permission to proceed with their agenda. This is why they love to use words like inclusive, equitable, resilient, sustainable, multipolar, collaborative, and even social justice, to make it seem like you're being invited to the table to help make decisions. In reality, all the decisions have already been made for you, and none of them are truly for your benefit. But the Davos class isn't stupid. They realize that many are onto their schemes, and have even acknowledged that the Great Reset sounds like a nefarious global conspiracy. So they're resorting to gaslighting tactics like this slickly produced video to get you to doubt your suspicions and paint anyone contradicting their narrative as a quack.
With everything falling apart, we can reshape the world in ways we couldn't before. Ways that better address so many of the challenges we face.
And that's why so many are calling for a great reset.
A great reset? That sounds more like buzzword bingo masking some nefarious plan for world domination. Hands up, this kind of slogan hasn't gone down well. But all we really want to say is that we all have an opportunity to build a better world.
Yeah, they love to dismiss any reports of their wicked agenda as conspiracy theories. But this sort of propaganda is nothing more than a magic trick. It's street corner sleight of hand with professionally produced videos, reports, and clever marketing. They desperately want you to believe they care deeply about you and are appalled by any resistance. How dare you even think to question them and seek out answers for yourselves? Trust the experts. Trust the government. Trust the bankers. Trust the science. Trust the plan. Trust the Davos class. The COVID pandemic is just the first phase of the plan to get you to surrender to their objectives. So what else do they have in store? The diabolical plans to formulate a global government were fomented long ago. The Club of Rome has played a huge role in it, going all the way back to 1972, with the publication of its report, The Limits to Growth, which essentially blames all societal problems on there being too many people consuming too many things. One of the primary ways this global syndicate of banking tycoons, intellectuals, scientists, bureaucrats, and their cronies planned to achieve their New World Order was by promoting the threat of global warming, which today has morphed into climate change. It is the ruse of climate change that's giving global technocrats the pretext to change the world by demanding net zero carbon emissions that would destroy the fossil fuel industry and completely alter the way the world operates. After centuries of running all of the industries that pollute the earth and fill it with poisons, they now want you to believe they have a plan to right all these wrongs. But the Club of Rome, World Economic Forum, and United Nations aren't the only groups advancing this scheme. There's also the World Government Summit, among a slew of other organizations, think tanks, and governments working to bring about their dream of global government.
This session, ladies and gentlemen, will focus on the specific types of enablers that are required to achieve sustainable development goals. The objective of this panel discussion is to share general and specific enablers that play a key role in supporting the achievement of the global agenda.
Thank you very much, and I'm very honored to have this opportunity to share our country's perspective on implementation of the SDGs agenda, and I think that really this agenda is most ambitious and most complex global agenda of international community has ever agreed upon.
First, allow me to say that we are very honored to be here today with you. And in Costa Rica's case, I think it's a combination of things that has enabled the way we have advanced with Agenda 2030. Starting from our constitution, from our Second Republic, it says, Article 50, that we believe in growth, but with distribution of wealth and also including other people, and doing it all while preserving the environment.
My background is in geography and computers, or geographic information systems. So I've been working closely with the UN to build what several of the previous speakers talked about, an information system or a federated information system for the SDGs. And essential to that is the question that you asked, which is about data sharing. So this system, which has been architected, is about national systems or national portals collaborating and sharing data into a global system.
The modern offshoots of the Limits to Growth report are Agenda 21 and the Sustainable Development Goals of Agenda 2030, developed by the United Nations. Is it a mere coincidence that a global pandemic happened at the start of 2020, just in time to usher in a decade of ambitious action in a bid to seize complete control of the planet? Is it by accident that this pandemic has also been used to propel the climate change agenda into overdrive? Another relevant question is, who gave the UN this authority? I never voted for Antonio Guterres, the current Secretary General of the United Nations, or any of the previous ones. And I'm sure you didn't either. But back in 1992, a bill was passed in the United States House of Representatives to commit the country to implementing Agenda 21. It was sponsored by none other than current House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and supported by current Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Bernie Sanders. Though this bill never passed in the Senate, many of its principles have been put in place over the years. No matter where you live, chances are your country has enacted similar laws without your consent. Concepts like social justice, universal basic income, and Green New Deal policies all stem from Agenda 21, and when fully in place will do much more harm than good. Thinking that most people are either in agreement with these plans or still locked into the matrix of false reality, the UN even had the audacity to create a website declaring a new world order with happiness, well-being, and freedom of all life on Earth by 2050. It brought so much blowback that they eventually removed it. The Davos class and their globalist minions love to pretend that their plans will benefit all humanity while continuing to hold most of the world's wealth and resources within their own coffers. While they promise global equity, they never reveal that it means everyone will be equally poor and dependent on technocratic overlords for every crumb on the table. Over the years, many brave souls have exposed their attempts to pull a bait and switch and leave the 99% with absolutely nothing.
We can agree that we're witnessing the Great Purge. It's the great concentration of wealth and power, the great reveal of willing dictators, the great reallocation of resources, the great digital revolution of the surveillance state. This is the agenda for the 21st century and beyond. It's the great rehash of the old plan. So I'm going to start there. UN Agenda 21, Sustainable Development, is the comprehensive blueprint. It's the action plan, as the UN calls it, to inventory and control all land, water, minerals, plants, animals, construction, means of production, energy, education, transportation, information, and all human beings in the world. It's an inventory and control plan. This is the agenda for the 21st century.
So much is going on in the world. Everybody's chasing rabbit trails here and there. If it isn't a virus, it's the vaccine. If it isn't a vaccine, it's something else. It's 5G, it's this, that, and the other. People are chasing after every possible rabbit that I've seen in the last 10 years. And this is not necessarily productive, because when people are chasing after the predetermined rabbits that the global elite want them to chase after, they're not looking at the real target, the real enemy, the real people that are pulling the strings on our global system. And believe me, I'm going to tell you today that I fully believe that the world, including the United States, has been totally punked and panicked by the global elite into voluntarily giving up our economic system that has supported the world for thousands of years.
So what is Agenda 21? Also referred to as sustainable development. It is not an environmental movement. It is a political movement which seeks to control the world's economy, dictates its development, captures and redistributes the world's wealth on a national, state, and local level. The process locks away land and resources from use by citizens and plants a central economy while controlling industry, transportation, food production, water, and the growth, size, and location of the population.
The same people who brought us climate change hysteria, the people that produced the studies at universities and so on that said we're all going to die in 10 years or 12 years and the seas are going to rise and the polar bears are going to die and all that kind of stuff, that whole crowd is the same crowd behind the hysteria that we are suffering under today. The same people who told us under the climate change mantra that we needed to curtail or destroy our economic system so the world can survive. The very same people are telling us that the virus pandemic is going to give us all this death and destruction across the world. And what's the only answer? Shut down your economy.
Today, you will learn how indoctrination is used to soften up the American citizen, to make them receptive to the transformation of a free world into a socialist, sustainable development world. Think of all the commercial and nature shows you have seen pushing the green agenda. Think of all the articles our biased media writes pushing the green agenda. Even various churches push the 3 E's. Let's not forget the schools and colleges that have curricula that has Agenda 21 ideas embedded, that are designed to create good global citizens that are willing to give up their individual constitutional rights for the common good in order to protect the environment.
At the heart of Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, Build Back Better, climate change, and the Great Reset is collectivism. As a pioneer of research into plans for global government, G. Edward Griffin explains how collectivism is nothing more than clever marketing to get people to give up their individual rights and for countries to give up their sovereignty to global elites.
Collectivism, as you just said in your introduction, is the underlying general ideology that is common to so many of the totalitarian systems of modern times. Communism, fascism, Nazism, all three of those have as their underpinning certain common elements to an ideology that really, they're the only things that you should be looking at. The names communism, fascism, Nazism, so forth, are just labels, but they don't describe anything. Collectivism is what we're talking about. So what is collectivism? We don't have time for all of it, but we've been able to identify certain common components. One of them is the idea that the group is more important than the individual, and that the individual, if necessary, must be sacrificed for the greater good of the greater number.
Well, collectivism is generally, I think the word was initially used by Ayn Rand, or that's the first usage that I'm really familiar with, but it basically means any system in which the group is elevated over the rights and importance of the individual. So anything, if fascism's collectivism, communism's collectivism, any sort of authoritarian system, they're all collectivism because they all use the pretext of the greater good for the greater number, as opposed to the greater good for the individuals. That is what is elevated, the greater good of the collective, and is always at the expense of the individual.
One of the biggest takeaways from Davos 2021 was the constant call for public-private partnerships to lead the way in achieving global change. This PPP buzzword is just a fancy way of saying fascism, or the merging of corporations and government into one totalitarian entity. So what could go wrong with merging the efforts of global corporations like Bank of America, BlackRock, Facebook, Goldman Sachs, Google, JP Morgan Chase, Microsoft, Palantir, Pfizer, and Visa with government agencies and civil society? After all, according to Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff, CEOs were the heroes of the pandemic.
CEOs around the world need to realize they must manage for all stakeholders, not just shareholders. And there has been a mantra for too long that the business of business is business. But today, the business about business is improving the state of the world. And this is more important than ever. We realize that. And so thank you, Klaus, for that. And we don't have to look any farther to that mantra than 2020 itself, the year of the pandemic. In the pandemic, it was CEOs in many, many cases all over the world who were the heroes. They are the ones who stepped forward with their financial resources, their corporate resources, their employees, their factories, and pivoted rapidly, not for profit, but to save the world.
The scary part about all of this is that Davos men like Benioff really believe they're the good guys, and they really want you to believe it too. By cooperating with governments, these and many other transnational corporations have completely seized control of our food supply, economic systems, transportation, technology, media, utilities, natural resources, health systems, and entertainment industries. These powerful, multi-million and billion-dollar corporations have grown into a beast-like system of control that dictates the rules of the game in each of their industries and are out to destroy independent operators. To deal with the growing backlash to the greed and control exerted by the Davos class of powerful CEOs and bureaucrats, Klaus Schwab has invented a new economic model called stakeholder capitalism, where private corporations are granted the role of trustees of society.
It's companies which drive innovation. It's companies who, in a competitive way, drive the fourth industrial revolution, drive social benefits, and so on. Now, the problem which we have is when we talk about capital, we think of financial capital. But actually, what you need for wealth creation is not just financial capital. It's human capital, it's social capital, it's natural capital. So we need to embrace a much larger definition of capital, and all those capitals create in a shared way wealth, and indirectly or directly for a country prosperity.
Along with the new book, Schwab has penned the Davos Manifesto, redefining the role of a company to fulfill a broader role in achieving environmental, social, and good governance objectives. Schwab again attempts to gaslight the public into believing that corporations can become altruistic, uphold human rights, and level the playing field to achieve equality. This is like trying to convince people that a leopard really can change its spots. They are really trying to persuade us that the billionaire club is tired of operating soulless, money-grabbing machines, destroying the environment, and really, yes, really want to help the little guy. Be warned though, Because as the Bible says, Satan's ministers love to transform themselves as angels of light. And following this pattern, greedy globalists like John Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, and of course, Bill Gates, all transform themselves into beloved philanthropists. It seems like this is also the future path of current wealthiest man alive, Jeff Bezos, now formerly of Amazon. But how can anyone in their right mind buy this, given that Bezos' company conspired with Google and Apple to remove an entire social media platform from the internet? Big tech companies have obliterated free speech, and it has nothing to do with the Democrat-Republican divide, but whether or not you agree with the tenets of the Davos agenda. On the surface, stakeholder capitalism sounds good, but dig a little deeper and all you're gonna find is a pyramid scheme with a smiley face sticker slapped on it while you still remain at the bottom. Stakeholder capitalism and the Davos Manifesto will only serve to increase the control corporations and their billionaire owners exert over every area of the human experience. Davos's newly polished schemes will completely usher in the age of full technocratic dominion. They already proclaim they want the 99% to own nothing. Why would anyone in their right mind believe this new wave of propaganda promising that megacorporations will become instruments of good?
This great reset is as serious and as dangerous a threat to our prosperity, to your prosperity and your freedom, as we have faced in decades, with these powerful bodies, including the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, and even Prince Charles boasting that within a few short years, yes, their words, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Remember, this is not me saying this is them. A terrifying coalition of big business, big tech, and left-wing totalitarians are so confident and so brazen. I mean, they just stole the US election, so I guess they're feeling pretty chuffed with themselves, that they are now promising you will own nothing and you will be happy. What they should have added is, and we, the very rich, will own everything and be even happier. Of course they will.
The real Davos agenda centers around using the fraud of climate change to usher in a technocratic, transhuman, fourth industrial revolution, complete with autonomous vehicles, the Internet of Things, advanced artificial intelligence, smart cities, and an internet of bodies to connect all humans with machines. Yes, Schwab has openly stated that the future will challenge our understanding of what it means to be human, from both a biological and a social standpoint. The Davos class wants to control the land, air, water, and every resource on the planet, including humans. It's why you and I, and all resources on the planet, are referred to as capital in stakeholder capitalism. It's also why COVID-19 provided the perfect gateway to advance the agenda to digitize everything and accelerate authoritarian control. Without the guise of a pandemic, where people were made to fear for their lives, they would have never been able to get this far so fast. Digital currencies, digital IDs, worldwide 5G coverage, biometric security, and an advanced global surveillance state is the true endgame. The Davos Con cannot be fully implemented without it.
We are in Tallinn, the capital of Estonia. The Baltic country is home to 1.3 million people and to one of the most advanced digital societies in the world. From e-residency to online voting to national ID cards, we're here to see how Estonia can be a blueprint for other countries looking to go digital. For our first stop, we went straight to the top with a visit to Estonia's president, Kersti Kaljulaid. If you could describe Estonia's digital society to someone who's maybe never heard of it before, what would you say?
You can apply for a passport, you can apply for a driver's license, you can sell your car and buy a car online, register it online. So most of the services in Estonia, when it concerns public service, is digital.
Estonians realized because they embraced the internet and technology, business and everything was going to move to the internet. Instead of just having an offline ID card, you also need something that works online.
So we are inside the showroom of eStonia, which showcases a lot of the country's digital solutions. We're going to take a look at the electronic ID and digital signatures. Every Estonian is issued a digital ID. Physical ID cards are paired with digital signatures that citizens use to pay taxes, vote, do online banking, and access their healthcare records. For a small country, the impact of the digital signatures has been big, saving the government an estimated 2% of GDP per year in salaries and expenses. Estonia says 99% of its public services are available online 24/7.
There's been a lot of talk about how much leisure humans will have once robots and artificial intelligence are taking care of the menial tasks people used to do. Many have bought the lie that the fourth industrial revolution will bring freedom and a new utopian era. Maybe this will happen for the Davos class, but what will become of the millions and even billions who will lose their jobs and livelihoods thanks to all this automation? Perhaps more future planned pandemics will spare them the indignity of becoming a serf or mere chattel serving the ruling class. Bill Gates sure seems to be thrilled with the possibilities.
The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's annual letter has now just come out. You both write about how this pandemic, in your view, will be as defining as World War II. What are the key steps to take right now?
Well, we have to do two things at once. We have to bring this epidemic to an end, primarily by getting the vaccine out in large numbers to the entire world. And we have to make sure that we're ready because there will be another pandemic. And there's so many lessons about how we weren't prepared, how we should have handled things differently. And, you know, when that's clearly in our mind, those investments need to be made.
First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
Perhaps no one has laid out the true agenda of the Davos class better than the late Aaron Russo.
The ultimate goal that these people have in mind is the goal to create a one world government run by the banking industry, run by the bankers.
The whole agenda is to create a one world government where everybody has an RFID chip implanted in them. All money is to be in those chips, right? There'll be no more cash. And this is getting straight from Rockefeller himself. This is what they want to accomplish. And all money will be in your chips. And so instead of having cash, anytime you have money in your chip, they can take out whatever they want to take out whenever they want to. They say you owe us this much money in taxes. They just deduct it out of your chip digitally.
Total control.
Total control. And if you're like me or you, and you're protesting what they're doing, they can just turn off your chip. You have nothing. You can't buy food. You can't do anything. It's total control of the people.
And that chip's connected to a database that has your purchasing records, what you do, what
Everything.
you sell.
Everything is in there, you know? And so they want a one world government controlled by them, everybody being chipped, all your money in those chips, and they control the chips and they control people. And you become a slave. You become a serf to these people. That's their goal. That's their intention.
This journey has taken us inside the devious minds of those who believe they are better, smarter, and worthy of making decisions for the rest of us. Decisions that will take away all of our God-given freedoms and plunge us into the depths of slavery and genocide. But it is we who need to be reminded to use the tools that God gave us to defeat the evil not only within ourselves, but also in this world. Though this is not a fairy tale, the lessons of one of the most iconic tales still stand true. To overcome increasing despotism, we need to stop cowering in fear and find courage like the cowardly lion. We need to disengage from propaganda and utilize the full capacity of our brains like the scarecrow. We need to stop allowing them to divide us and have our hearts renewed and filled with love like the Tin Man. And we need to awaken out of the dreamlike state we're in, like Dorothy, and realize what is really taking place. When we arise from the slumber induced by the media shills and globalist entities pulling their strings, we'll see that they're just mere men and women behind a curtain trying to manipulate us, just like the Wizard of Oz. The only way they win is by deception, fear, and misplaced trust.
The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.